Welcome back to Spoiler Season, where today we have two buffed unique items to go over. The first being a massive meme that might actually see some use now, and the second being the first reworked or buffed unique item that looks genuinely and generically powerful, including in the endgame. That's right, we finally got one that you might actually choose to build around for your tier 16 and beyond mapping build. So first up, Bronn's Lithe. Before, it was a very niche item. It might be worth it early on as it had a very good amount of evasion rating. In addition, it also had 15% attack and cast speed. Unfortunately, however, it was, at best, the queen of a forest we had at home, and at worst, so heavily power crept that it barely saw use even on day one. I'm not saying that nobody used the item, but I am saying that not very many people had a good reason to. There are a surprising amount of gems in Path of Exile with the movement tag, including all the things you'd expect, like Flame Dash, Frost Blink, and of course, Cyclone. There's a few you won't expect, but we'll get into that in a little bit. It lost the attack and cast speed, which is a little bit worse for skills that primarily scale off of your weapons. So if you're thinking of this as the budget choice for a Flicker Strike build, that's not going to be a great idea anymore. However, if you're thinking about it for a skill that primarily scales off of gem level, such as a spell, or maybe Cyclone, but more importantly Shield Charge, then it's looking pretty nice. Plus 5 levels is not that bad all on its own, and if you put in an Empower, it's not going to be that hard to get your gem over level 30, especially with some global levels from your amulet. You can even corrupt the chest for even more value. While I don't think this is the most amazing endgame item ever, it is pretty interesting. We don't have very many ways to reach over level 40 with gems, except now we have plus 5 from Valkyras and plus 5 from Bronn's Lithe, which is notable because certain gems at very high levels gain additional breakpoints. Shield Charge, for example, ends up gaining 7 to 9 added fizz damage based on the defenses of your shield. This is a very nice bump at a level 34 gem, which before was often very impractical to obtain, even with something like plus 2 from an amulet and a double corrupted helmet or chest piece. And of course, you can't ignore the meme value of this item. I'm sure that Mathil is already planning some sort of Frost Blink or Flame Dash totem build while using Bronn's Lithe for massive amounts of damage. All jokes aside, if we're talking about using this in a serious way, Frost Blink or Flame Dash Ignite with Ignite Prolif is probably the way to go. Maybe you do some sort of Shield Charge plus Herald's Auto Bomber style thing, but overall, this is not going to be a build that you use for single target damage. Instead, you want to go fast, and you want to scale AoE to clear as passively as possible. With things like RF and the Maven Boots, or actual Herald of Thunder Auto Bombers, there's not necessarily much reason to make the build, but there's not necessarily much reason to make a lot of builds in Path of Exile, and that doesn't stop people from doing it for the memes, so I'm sure we're going to see some builds utilizing this item. Now, this one might not have too many practical applications. The next item, however, that I'm going to talk about absolutely does, and is the first item that's been buffed, which I'd say is something truly recommended for endgame. Before I get into that though, a quick reminder that if you've been finding this video helpful, maybe you learned something about a build or unique items, be sure to leave a like and recommend it to a friend. For more content, get subscribed, or if you want to see something else right now, click through the card and check out my second channel, where I often talk about news, game reviews, and much more. A special thanks to my patrons and YouTube channel members for the continued support, allowing me to make videos just like this one. But more about how you can support at the end. For now, let's start talking about the Magnate. Currently, the Magnate is an absolutely amazing leveling item if you can get to 200 strength for the all-res. Flask charges gained is very nice early on, as it helps keep your flasks topped off even if there isn't super high monster density or you're not killing incredibly quickly. Having that all-res is always good. Global Fizz is pretty generically useful, be it for dot or hit builds, conversion builds, or things doing Impale. And Strength is never a bad thing while leveling. It gives you life, and if you're a melee build, it gives you a bit of damage. So right now, the Magnate is very generic, but it's not super great for endgame. That's where something like the Nomad or the Tactician comes in. The new Magnate, however, is really interesting. The all-res is a baseline now, so at level 16, you get the all-res immediately without having to gain strength to activate it. It retains the strength that it has, meaning getting 2 or even 400 won't be that hard, and the flask charge, so it's still good when your build is a little bit slower. It loses the 30 to 40% global fizz. That's not really a bad thing, it was just increased damage anyway, and increased damage has a minimal impact on your build. Maybe the belt is worse at level 16, but it's going to be vastly better at level 40, 50, or even, maybe, level 100. Because what you get for it is absolutely massive. With 200 strength, 10% chance to deal double damage, and with 400 strength, 5% chance to deal triple damage. Each of these are effectively 10% more multipliers. So if we want to do some rounding and be lazy about our math, we can truncate the whole thing and say that if you have 400 strength, you now deal 20% more damage. Keep in mind, this is not physical damage and this is not attack damage. So for any build that hits, you can benefit from a new Magnate. Unfortunately, this does mean the belt is much worse for Fizzdot, and it also means it's not great with Paradoxica. However, there are far more builds that aren't Fizzdot and don't use Paradoxica than there are builds who do those things. So that's not really too much of a problem. In many ways, it's now the Rizlatha's Coil that we have at home. 400 strength could be a big ask for certain builds. Let's say you're making a speedy Gal Ranger, that's not really going to be in your wheelhouse. However, if you're on a duelist, you'll probably be around 300 strength as long as you're going to the left side of a tree anyway. If you're on a Marauder, you probably have 300 to 350, and a lot of Templars benefit from stacking strength as well. So it's also not an unreasonable thing to ask. And remember, this is only the regular version of the item. We haven't seen the faded versions. I would imagine that both the Nomad and the Tactician are also getting updates and buffs to be in line with a Magnate. If not, it handily outclasses both of them now. Which makes me think that even though the Magnate is going to be very endgame viable, something that you could put on in SSF and use for, well, the entire time you play the character, or even in Trade League, use in tier 16 maps and not feel bad about it, because 20% more damage, some strength, and some all-res is quite a lot of value, especially on a very common belt that you can easily corrupt or double corrupt. It might actually be outshone by the faded versions. I'm very curious what those are going to be. Which leaves me with only one question. What do you think the faded updates for both the Nomad and the Tactician will be? And do you plan to use one in your League Start build? Let me know some of your thoughts down in the comments below. A special thanks to my patrons and YouTube channel members. Your support helps keep me independent and allows me to turn down things like sketchy mobile game sponsorships. You can do so for as low as $1 a month over on Patreon, or if you want to support me completely for free, then you can join the community by hopping into my Discord, link below. If you want more content, check out my second channel, 10 Gaming Thoughts. It's a place that I use to review games, ramble my way through video essays, and a lot more. Or of course, you can just click the suggested video in the card right now. I hope you learned something today, and maybe I'll see you again sometime soon.